Welcome to the 2016 FADER debate. This year we will be debating between June 16th and the 20th. This is one of my favorite units to teach. It's the last unit of the year that I like to do because it takes everything that we've done the entire year in language arts, in research studies, in reading and writing workshops. It's all inclusive, and so for today's lesson, what we're going to do is go over the different steps and format for the debate. So the first role I want to talk about is the mediator, and that would be the teacher's role. What I do is introduce the debaters for each team. There's a pro side and a con side. We have different topics that we've brainstormed as a class together that are meaningful to each other. And we narrow them down depending on how many teams we will end up with. This year, we ended up with 6 teams because I had 24 students in the class. And there's 4 per team. The mediator also manages time. I use a stopwatch, and the students are aware of how much time they have to debate and rebut. I also maintain the order so students are aware of what's coming up. I instruct the jury. Now the jury is composed of the next group that's going to come up to present, and so they are being judged by their peers, and they are instructed at the very beginning as well to make sure that they're listening to the facts and the information that's being provided and not judging based on who's your friend and who isn't. They also have to set aside their own personal feelings, and that's a really difficult thing to do, especially when you believe strongly in a topic. The last thing is I will thank both sides for debating, and I close the debate. This is an example of the setting where I have the students are set up here for the pro side, pro 1 and 2, and the con side are side by side. On the background I have the topic, so it's already highlighted up here for everyone to see, and the names of the students that are debating. The students, when we talk about the beginning of preparing for this debate, there's a process that they have to go through. And the first thing is, certainly as a class, we're going to brainstorm the different topics. The second thing we look for is the students will draw names, and that'll select the teams. And at this point, there's 4 students per team. And the way that it's selected is the topic. So there's 4 slips with the same topic on it, and whoever selects that topic creates the team. At this point, though, they don't know who is going to be the pro and who will be the con. So what I ask them to do is research at least 10 facts to support both sides, so that they are fully prepared and they can predict what their opponents might be saying, so that they can come back with the rebuttal. This is all for preparation. We talk a lot about being in a jury and in court, and how the lawyers debate and the jury is there to make the final decision with the judge. And you need to know what your opposing arguments or the opposing side is going to say, so you're prepared to counter that. Then after they finish their facts, the teams will draw for the sides, pro versus con, and we have pro 1, pro 2, con 1, con 2. Last thing is that is deciding who is it going to be. So within those 2 partnerships, they will decide who will be the first one to present. Now, the format for this is the moderator always opens up the debate. So I'm going to start by always introducing the topic with "let it be resolved that." And I have what's coming up later on, a few examples of topics for you. Then I direct the opening statement to the affirmative or the pro side. So this would be pro 1. So just to keep it organized, I have them set up that way where Pro 1 will start. They will give a 2-minute speech of their opening statement, which agrees with the resolved, the topic. After following the 2 minutes, then I direct the opposing side for the rebuttal. And I ask them to provide a 1-minute speech that's really going to counter-argue any of the comments or facts that were given in the opening statement. So your listening skills have to be very good for this session. They'll have their facts written out in front of them. And this is all based on the research that was done previous to the actual debating. This usually takes a couple of weeks. I allow the students to have that time to really thoroughly understand the topic from both sides. So following that, then we switch to the other side and we go to the opening statement from the con side. And this is typically con 1 or -1 side. Again, 2 minutes. Then it goes back. So this is a little bit of a back and forth process. You have to keep that in mind. Then we go back to the rebuttal, and that's on the pro side. And they have 1 minute to counter argue anything that the con had just said. This process then repeats itself. So therefore, Pro 2 will have an opportunity to speak for 2 minutes, and then con 1 or con 2 could rebut. And then it goes back and flip-flops to con 2, and con 2 will have a 2-minute speech. At the end of this process, then it goes back again at the pro side, and they can give closing arguments. Now, there's 2 ways you can organize this. You could provide 30 seconds per person, so 30 seconds for Pro 1, 30 seconds for Pro 2, and then 30 seconds for Con 1, 30 seconds for Con 2. That's one way of doing it. The second way would be just to provide 1 minute per side, and they can choose who will be representing the closing statements. So that's pretty much the debating format. Now the jury, as I mentioned earlier, is typically the way I set it up. It'll allow the students their opportunity to sit on the jury so that I have every team coming in before the other. We have a common rubric that is given, and this is just an example of the rubric. So we have the different criteria and how was their arguments, how did they use the reasons for supporting their argument. We talk about cross-examination and the rebuttal. Well, how did they present that? Was it strong? Was it weak? Did they not provide enough facts? Finally, at the end of it is we're looking at the presentation style. So were they believing what they were saying, persuading the jury? So I have 2 set up here. There's the pro side, pro team, and then I have the con team. So I typically print this off on a back-to-back format so that the jury has it and they can go back and forth. So it depends on the rubric and who judged. Again, the jury is selected to make sure that they're listening to the facts, so they too have to turn on their listening skills and really judge based on how strong the arguments were. In case of a tie, the mediator will break the tie. And this year, we did end up having a tie, and the scores were equal. So then I reverted back to the assessment that I made during the debate as well. Here are some examples of the debating topics that we used in the past. One was all about the public schools implementing uniforms. The topic this year that we used that was really strong was the LGBTQ community. Some students were really interested in finding out a little bit more about their equal rights to marriage. We also talked about physical education classes and becoming a daily part of the curriculum. And another topic that came up, of course, because we started off the year with a strong elections unit, and the students were very interested in knowing how our Canadian system works. So they wanted to know if it was possible to have the age of Canadians that the legal age of voting be dropped to 16 years of age. So these were really the hot topics this year. And you have to be prepared to make sure that the topic you're researching has a lot of information and facts out there. So there you go. Good luck, and may the odds be ever in your favor.